What's up, Joe 200? Hey, it's February 20th. It is President's Day 2023, and this is week 7. Boom. We were just embracing right along. We're transitioning now from the basic biology where we looked at why aging put us at risk in terms of a number of features, lack of repair, overexposure to growth factors from overnutrition, and then we kind of linked that into a link to cancer. We went over really the scourge of modern society and industrialized, westernized, whatever you want, countries of excess, and that was diabetes last week, and we kind of linked it to, of course, to vascular dysfunction, especially obesity. Obesity linked with diabetes, and the biggest risk factor for type 2 diabetes, which is adult onset, is obesity. And it's because of the inflammation of the blood vessels. The blood vessels just don't work right. The same inflammatory signals can be at risk as well for cancer, as well as the excess production of IGF-1 and insulin that happens when you're obese. Okay, so we're transitioning now into the brain, and we're going to link that to the more sociological factors of brain dysfunction that can happen with pathology as you get older, and that is caregiving in this week's discussion. And so we are going back into the social sciences and linking it way back to week 1, where we looked at really the cost of aging and the burden individually, in your community, and larger level society and globally. All right. So you guys have done a great job on CT1. We've been really enjoying looking into those. I'm going to jump right in here into week 7. Awesome. So I did my overview, and we kind of started hinting about all these burdens of aging that are associated with not infectious diseases. They're not called communicable. They're non-communicable progressive diseases of aging, and then we went into why aging was a big risk. We did cancer. We did diabetes, and again, I'm really harping on this. I'm going to reflect on that again today. And then we're going to do Alzheimer's. And you see, next week, we're going to have the caregiving discussion. Next week, the exam will open and stays open for an entire week, okay? Once you do it, once you click on and start begin, you get 2 hours unless you have accommodations that you've hooked up with the university, so SAS accommodations, okay? And then we're going to go full circle and look at the economic impact for aging, and then what we can do about it. That's how we're gonna give you some plans here in the very end. Okay, guys. Alrighty. So let's go right into week 7. As always, I encourage you to open up the quiz simultaneously. So you just go into a different browser, and you go right in here. Okay, and you go into week 7, okay? And the only difference is that what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into week 7 and open the browser, all right? And the reason I'm doing this is I want to go ahead and have my quiz ready as I'm reviewing the material. It's an approach. I'm just letting you guys know. So you would just go right in here, hit quiz, hit begin, and review the questions, okay? And I'm going to talk about some transitions today as well, okay? And what's going on in terms of Alzheimer's. All right, so we go back over here to the actual material. All right, this video is going to be placed right here as always, okay? So we're going to start with the psychology of aging, okay? Looking at people's psychological well-being gets pinned under what are called affective disorders of aging. And specifically, we're honing in on clinical depression. We could also be looking at other brain diseases that happen and that are other affective disorders like a schizophrenia or bipolar disease. But the big one is clinical depression. In reality, schizophrenia incidence and severity does go down with aging, and bipolar disease is a much smaller percentage. And the big one, of course, is clinical depression. All right. So This right here is a really good practice manual that put out by the American Psychological Association. It is a website. What we really wanted you to do is concern yourselves with this part right here. It's a real quick overview of the key issues, okay? So you click on this, okay, in terms of the psychology of aging. We're going to look at the mental and behavioral health concerns that face older Americans. So it's a real nice quick overview. It's not truly 11 pages because, as you'll see, what we did is the APA took this out of their website, but we made a PDF file, and you see the reading is compressed into little bullet paragraphs. Okay, so we're gonna, one thing that's it's important. A lot of you may be considering becoming psychologists, therapists as you get older. As you get older, when you graduate, to take care of people that have mental health issues, and a big concern is a lack of specialization in terms of psychologists and therapists in the issues that are specific to clients that are of older age. Okay, and the depression that people get can be appropriate. You'll see as you specialize, there's appropriate and inappropriate depression. People that are young, wealthy, got it all going on. Why are they depressed? Okay. Well, it has a lot to do with transitions in brain chemistry, and that's a whole different field. It's very anatomical and organic. It is a disease. It can be treated. And then people that get older, their depression can be viewed as appropriate because of so many aspects of their life that transition and change that from when they were most happening when they were younger. Me, I'm 67 years of age, and I've had to wrap my head around the physical limitations that have been thrown at me. Multiple orthopedic surgeries from being an athlete, and how that keeps me from being able to be the surfer that I once used to be, and it's psychologically very difficult to deal with. Okay, death of friends, death of family members. All right, this is something that you have to deal with as you get older, and it can cause clinical depression. All right, so loss of a spouse, loss of mobility. Okay, down the line, losing my independence. These are all big deals. Okay, so these are big concerns. Okay, and we see that, a large percentage, almost a quarter of people over 55 suffer from a mental disorder. You see that the numbers jump dramatically when you are put into a nursing home, and it goes back to this issue of loss of mobility, loss of independence, loss of spouse. These are all just multiplied in terms of your mental well-being when you are placed into some type of nursing home or assisted living facility. And it's a scourge. People don't report it. Okay, so they suffer through it, and yet they don't report it. So they need a lot of help. And so I really, hope that you guys, consider this in terms of, your future. Being a service provider in the mental health community for aging is a huge, huge thing. And as we saw from everything you've learned in this class, the numbers are enormous. Okay. Alrighty. So, mental health can cause an elevation of stress hormones, and these stress hormones can have huge impacts on your immune system. So they cause immune suppression, so you're more likely to get sick as you get older. And that's right up against the decline in immune function that is depressing. That happens anyways. My immune system, we produce somewhere in the order between 2 and 500 billion new white blood cells to fight infection every single day. But my bone marrow is about 30% capacity of what yours is, okay? Because of the natural decline. And for every decade of life that you have, you can take away 10% of the stem cells that exist in your bone marrow. Now, in addition, stress causes cardiac problems from the stress-related diabetes. Yes, you can get diabetes just from stress, okay? So these are huge issues. We'll show you later on in a graphic, but the likelihood of suicide is dramatically increased in older people, okay? Because of all the issues that we listed. It's like the willingness to live because of loss of function, loss of independence, and loss of your social support circle is huge. So it's something that has to be contended with. The second topic of this lecture is about Alzheimer's disease. And again, the numbers are staggering. Okay, as we successfully treat the diseases of early aging, so to speak. Okay, so as we are able to, as Julia discussed, push back the incidence and also the likelihood of death from cancer, as we do a better job with diabetes and heart disease. Okay, um, and oftentimes it's living with diabetes and living with heart disease because medicine has figured out these tools, then you're more likely to enter into a high-risk group for getting Alzheimer's disease. And again, it's staggering, the millions of people, okay? We're expected to have 22 million people in 2025 with Alzheimer's disease. And you see how Alzheimer's cases double, okay, every 5 years from age 65 to 75 years of age. So you get to the point that by the time you're at 85 years of age, 1 out of every 3 people has dementia. All right, so these are big deals. We're going to go over how you diagnose dementia. There is no blood test. Okay, all you can do is rely on a trained psychologist trained therapists to run what's called a psychological battery of tests called the mini mental status exam. Now, when we look at all these issues that we've talked about up here, it is no surprise that it's hard for older Americans to get to see psychiatrists and psychologists. There aren't enough, okay? If we look in the field of medicine, there is such a low number of psychiatrists that are out there. And so what people do is they self-medicate. And we see that there's a ramping up of substance abuse that occurs in older people. And this is how they deal with the significant losses that they have. Chronic illness is another reason to be depressed and also another reason to put you at risk for Alzheimer's disease. All right, so that's, like I said, it's a pretty cool overview. This one right here, this is not a requirement of the class. Your quiz and your midterm exam does not tap into these resources. But if you have questions, okay, that really you want to go dive in and get some more detail about some of these issues that are very relevant to psychological issues associated with aging, I encourage you to check out the website that is here from the American Psychological Association on Aging. Right, and for some reason it's not fully loading for me, but that's okay. Let's go back in here. There, awesome. Anyways, and there's, like I said, there's so much detail on this in this particular website. So I'm going to get out of here, and I'm going to see what happens if I go back in and try again. I don't know why I'm having trouble with loading it, but I am. Okay, so I'm not getting a good result on this website. There normally is a real cool interactive component to this website. I'll come back to it later on, but I don't think it's going to be happening. Anyways, check it out, okay? All right. Now, I wanted to link back just in one quick figure and one quick statement. You see the dashed lines right here and the dashed lines right here, okay? We talked about diabetes, okay? And people that study brain diseases of aging, study Alzheimer's, are now referring to Alzheimer's disease as type 3 diabetes. And you can do a search on this, and it is a big deal. And it is kind of a new awareness in terms of the underlying mechanisms, the reasons why diabetes is such a high risk for Alzheimer's. And when we look at the numbers, okay, so we see truths about type 3 diabetes. Type 3 diabetes, there's a ton of information out there, all right? What are we talking about here? We'll go back to this graphic right here. 80%, 80 of people with Alzheimer's disease are either pre-diabetic, they have insulin resistance, or they're full-blown type 2 diabetes. And so, why is this? What is going on here? Why does diabetes put people at such high risk? Well, our nerve cells need to get glucose into them, bottom line. And if you become insulin resistant, then our nerve cells, the insulin goes through the blood into the brain, and it basically binds to an insulin receptor and says, okay, open the gates, let the glucose in. It doesn't happen. Your nerve cells are super metabolic. 2% of your body weight consumes 30% of your oxygen and glucose, all right? 30% of your calories because it's firing away all the time. So you're going to be running into trouble if you don't provide the fuel for the brain to work, the fuel for the brain to constantly rejuvenate itself. I'm talking about making new proteins, putting out brand new processes, antennae called dendrites to receive information, putting out new cables. It all requires fuel, all right? And in addition, when you're a diabetic, it is a high risk factor for causing inflammation in the brain that then will lead to some of the pathologies that underlie Alzheimer's disease. All right, so this is where we get into the second part. So what we want you to do is to take ownership of this, and you go to this website. Hopefully, this website is working better than the one I just looked at, and it looks like it is. And so you go in here and you just kind of hunt around, figure out what the NIH says the basics of Alzheimer's disease, the causes, how you do the diagnosis, you can figure out caregiving, et cetera, on and on. So I just want you to kind of go through this. And I'm sure a lot of you guys are dealing with this in terms of your parents and grandparents, okay? So you just click on one of the boxes here. It's going to take you in here, and it says, symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. What are the signs of Alzheimer's disease, okay? So this is what I would do right here. I would just click on this. And then they go through kind of the list of problems that somebody has with Alzheimer's in terms of the memory losses. And again, diagnosis, okay, of Alzheimer's disease, right here, we click down here, is purely based on psychological analysis, okay? I refer to the mini mental status exam, okay, and that's key, okay? There's no blood test, okay? There's no imaging test. And you can go through, this is where things are looking for, where the future is, could we have some type of biomarker, but it's not standard of care, okay? Awesome. All right, so I just wanted to show you that, all right? I'm gonna get out of there, all right, and we'll go right in here. So hunt around in this, and I'll tell you straight up, okay, in terms of the underlying mechanism, this particular video right here, and if you go into this website again, they're going to talk about the end result pathology. So when the nerve cells die, we get these clumps of what are called amyloid plaques. It's an abnormal kind of collection of proteins that are toxic and are thought to maybe make nerve cells die. The other one is you get nerve cells are really long cables, and the railroad tracks that go down the middle of nerve cells to deliver essential components, proteins and fats and things like that. They have a protein called tau that gets altered. It gets phosphorylated. It doesn't work as well. Both the plaques and tangles, that are the abnormal amyloid and the tau, your brain can't get rid of them, and so it collects and collects and collects, and it's thought to be toxic. Okay, it's thought to be maybe preceded by conditions that related to the diabetes that I talked about. But there's some controversy about whether or not it's just an end result of the brain dying off, and these elements are not the toxic elements. A lot of the new drugs that have come out, where we infuse antibodies into the blood, and the antibodies bind to these amyloid, smaller amyloid molecules, hoping to suck them out of the brain, basically. They're super expensive, lots of side effects, and they're not really working. There is no good drug for treating Alzheimer's disease. All the drugs that are out there, they treat the symptoms, sort of. You might get about a 10% improvement, but there's nothing that is slowing the progression of the disease. And that's the huge issue. And the problem is this disease has a life course of, things might be clicking along, setting the table for brain loss and Alzheimer's disease over a 30-year period. It's far different than cancer, where all of a sudden you can have a tumor that erupts, okay, and happens over about a year period. You can take drugs for cancer that can just nail it. not this, and gets rid of the cancer, and then the tissue rejuvenates. Your brain doesn't rejuvenate. So once the wheels are set in motion, you're just dealing with a loss of brain function. So that's a big difference in terms of treatment. These are the staggering numbers, okay, that we talked about. So it's a really cool video to look at. It just kind of rifles through all the issues, and every year the Alzheimer's Association puts out new stats about how many people have Alzheimer's. 6 million Americans, 1 in 3 seniors. So it just goes on and on and on, okay? We know that more people are going to live longer. There's going to be more seniors, so that 6 million is going to go up. This goes over the basic biology that I was just talking about the amyloid problems and plaques. And elevated amyloid also is a risk for cardiovascular disease. So people often have heart disease, diabetes, and then Alzheimer's. All right, so this is important as we are going back over here, and we were talking about the need for specialists in terms of dealing with clinical depression and aging. We see that in terms of the age at onset, okay, so this doesn't mean, okay, that this does not how many people have depression. This is just the age at where it starts. And we see that this could be a life battle for somebody that that was dealing with major depression in their teens and 20s. Okay, the neurochemistry and the wiring of the brain that is just not correct. Okay, can be a life battle. Okay, we see that the likelihood of having depression at an onset of depression at an older age where you never had a problem with it before is far less. Okay, so that's just something to kind of wrap your head around. So when we look at these stats, it's like, okay, this is a young person's issue, and it's diagnosed again by a psychiatrist using this basic manual, okay, and which is called the Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders 5, and they have a bunch of criteria, and it's been done for 75 years, and it's very, 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 very applied and quantitative, and you can really get a good diagnosis. Now we look over here, we see that even though the age of onset is lower here, we see that the likelihood of suicide is totally age related, and this goes back to the very factors we were talking about, where you lose your independence, you lose your social circle, okay, you lose your spouse, and so people find themselves grappling with, is it worth it anymore? Okay. We can look at suicide rates by ethnicity. Okay, we can look at suicide rates by sexual affiliation. All right, so X chromosome versus XY chromosome. Okay, and I don't have the statistic here, but women are 3 times more likely to be diagnosed with clinical depression, but men, because of our testosterone, are much more likely to commit suicide. All right. So we can see the American Indian, American Native population has a high suicide rate here. We see here the white population of males has a high suicide rate, and we go down and down and down and down. Alrighty. When we look at, again, numbers as a function of age in terms of Alzheimer's disease, we see that we have men here in the lighter green. I wish this was a better graphic in that way. And then this is women here in the darker green. And see, we churn along, but then women outnumber men as we look at the older populations. So what is going on here? First of all, you go through menopause, and it's going to, estrogen is a fertilizer for brain development and maintaining brain structure and function. The other thing that happens is men die earlier. All right, so the men that would have gotten Alzheimer's die off, and the healthy men stay alive. So they're prevalent. So this is just a snapshot of how many people have Alzheimer's in this age group at this one moment in time. You can see it right here. Okay, awesome. So again, these are the numbers, to look at. Okay, and again, prevalence is how many people have it now, incidences, is there an increase at that moment in time? So that's the two different statistical measures that are made, okay? And we see that, amazing number, that's having 13 million people with dementia is something that you're going to have to deal with, okay? And then these figures are just, taken from the video right here, a reiteration of some of the staggering numbers that have to be dealt with, okay? And we see that there is a discrimination, okay, a barrier in terms of dementia care. While we see that like I said, men and women, there is a difference, but the big deal is access to health care. And there's a big difference we see here across different ethnicities. 1 in 3, okay, more than 6 million, increase with COVID, okay, and then the cost. The cost is enormous, okay. We see right here the cost for caring for people with dementia right here. The individual that have dementia is 1.1 trillion, and then the cost to the caregivers, add on another 300 billion. Okay, these numbers are staggering. Okay, staggering. Okay, this kind of goes back and forth about the symptoms of normal changes in your memory versus changes that might happen if somebody is demented. And again, I encourage you to go in and look a little deeper into that. So we've kind of set the table here. So now, and we go back to this staggering amount of money that is the cost for healthcare. Okay, $305 billion. Okay, and then the other thing is the amount of money that is going towards caregivers. Okay, all right. So we look at this $300 billion here. Okay, and what is that? What is the part of that calculation? It's not only this is how much it costs to go for the doctor visits, and this is how much it costs to do putting people into nursing homes, but it's the cost of you being the caregiver and not being able to do well in your job. You're sandwiched in between your children, your parents' dementia, caring for them, and then your job. And so there's huge losses. This is this profile. My dog wants to go outside. That's why she's banging the bells, if you hear that in the background. And so we look at, your typical caregiver. And this is, I was just talking to a good friend of mine, So she's 55 years old, okay? Her dad is 90. He has dementia. They can't put him in a memory care unit because they don't have the $100,000 a year that it would cost to put their dad in a memory care unit. This $100,000 a year is not covered by Medicare. It's not covered by health insurance. It's completely out of pocket. All right. And so people doing the moral and correct thing then have to go up and watch their parents. She has a job. She has her own kids that she's dealing with. And then, so her sister is helping. So it's 5 days on for her sister, 5 days on for her. She leaves, she goes to work, and and the stress is enormous. Okay, so we see 33% of caregivers have this interference with work. We've trained our dogs to ring the bells. The problem is they ring the bells. All right. We see that 14% of people completely stop working, right? So that's a loss of income. So we start seeing where this $350 billion starts coming from, okay? Oftentimes you don't have another family member to help with the caregiving. So we see that 42% you're the sole caregiver. This at the time of this sample, the average age was 27. Hey, that's right around the corner for you guys, okay? And the kind of jobs you're doing is you're in constant communication with insurance companies, constant communication with physicians, okay? And then the new gig is you're performing at-home nursing tasks yourself, okay? And I was just talking to my friend, Dorina yesterday, and I said it's going to get to the point that you are going to need help. It's really, really difficult, demoralizing for a parent when their child has to start bathing them, has to start helping them with going to the bathroom, all these activities of daily living. that start having to be performed by the family member. So this is a big deal. Okay, oftentimes the caregiver has to travel more than an hour. So my friend lives down here in Costa Mesa. Her dad lives up in Whittier. So every day that's a new commute above and beyond her dealing with having to go to work and her kids and everything else. Okay. You see the majority of older people are living at home in their own house, and so they're not living with the caregiver, all right? Um, Staggering numbers, okay? If we look at the ratio, mostly women compared to men, but it's men are right there with it, okay? So these are all just things to look at, all right? So this is for your discussion. So then this goes through caregiving. This is an example of this is an amazing video. What somebody that has dementia is like. You have to watch this, okay? The crisis that is caregiving that I just talked about. And so then knowing that nobody pays for this stuff, you know what? And the other thing is we're dealing with this right now with my father-in-law, okay? So he spent, I don't know, maybe over the last 20, 30 years, he's probably spent $50,000 on what's called long-term care insurance, so that once you are officially in need of assistance with all these activities of daily living, some in-home medical care, the long-term care insurance is supposed to kick in and pay for it, so that out-of-pocket doesn't exist. They'll take your money, but they will fight you tooth and nail. My wife's an attorney, and we've had to fight with them for almost a year. He wanted to have home health aid, in-home care, because that's what we all do. No, we don't want to be put in an assisted living facility. His wife, my wife's stepmom, still lives at home. She can help out, but she's having health issues. Okay, and they will not pay. So we have to provide them with so much information that's not in any of the paperwork that you sign up to. If you transition in or out of a nursing home and back home, then all the rules change. So it's a mess. Okay. Anyway, so this is our prompt, guys. We gotta fix this, because when people are living longer, your parents, your grandparents, this is gonna be your burden. You know, how do we create an incentive so that when people live longer in life, that we have money to care for them? Okay. Just like we have, you know, plans, but we can put away money for college. We need to have plans. We put away money for Alzheimer's. Okay, and um, and we got to have better policies that will regulate these long-term care insurance companies, so they will pay up. Okay, on and on. So this is something you need all to do. If you are dealing personally with long-term care insurances, long-term care issues, caregiving issues, and you're looking for assistance, and you live in the Southern California area, this is um, our own Davis School of Gerontology's Family Caregiver Support Center. You can't do it alone. Contact them, and they have caseworkers that will help you out. Okay, guys? Alrighty. Peace. We'll be reminding you about the midterm coming up. You're going to do well. Enjoy your day off. It's going to rain like no tomorrow all week, so enjoy the sun today.